Welcome back to Steven Watches Movies. I'm Steven and I love watching movies. Recently, I watched Fantastic Four First Steps and I have some thoughts. I wouldn't really call this video a review because I don't know how I feel about it. The movie ended and I sat there watching the credits, confused. Normally, I feel something when the film ends, and I didn't. There was no, yeah, that was great, or oh wow, what a waste of time, or anything in between. I just sat. So this video won't really be a review. It'll just be a collection of thoughts. I got home from the theater, I wrote some notes down, so I'm just going to go through these notes, and I will try to elaborate and hopefully make them make sense. So first up, love Joseph Quinn. Yeah, I love Joseph Quinn. I thought he was great in Fantastic Four First Steps. I think he's great in everything. He brings a certain energy to everything that he does, and I just love it. Confused as they keep saying Human Torch. Oh, yeah, okay. I was confused that they keep saying that Human Torch, Joseph Quinn, Johnny Storm, however you want to say it, is like a ladies' man, he's a womanizer, whatever. They allude to it a few times, actually, in the film, but it's never shown. Watching the 2005 version, you see it in action, and so it makes sense. You connect the dots a lot faster. I want to see why Johnny Quinn... not Johnny Quinn, Johnny Storm, why everyone thinks he's a ladies' man. I want to see Reed Richards being that genius a little bit more. I want to see Stu Storm being that highly regarded person in that world. So I really feel like they didn't flesh out these specific iterations of the characters. They kind of relied heavily on the audience to already know them from previous films or comics and to just dive in. And I think that was maybe a mistake. I understand it wasn't an origin story, and so you have to kind of just jump in, which I'm totally cool with. I just think they needed to make a little bit more room in the film to flesh that out a little bit more. Next up, Pedro Pascal. Oh yeah, so Pedro Pascal was the weak link for me. And I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I just think the other three were so good. I just felt like Pedro was sort of the same throughout the entire film. Whether he's being a genius at the chalkboard, inventing things, trying to figure out how to save the world, or at the end of the film during an action sequence where he's trying to save the world. But I just didn't feel like he had much to do. I don't think this is negative to Pedro. I think he's an excellent actor. I think he did a great job. It's just that the other three had more to do and were more, I guess, three-dimensional. They just felt more like three-dimensional characters. I really thought I was going to hate Ben's beard. So the Thing grows a rock beard, essentially. And I thought it was going to be so bad. Just how it was going to be portrayed in the film and how they were going to work that in. I thought it was a great choice. I loved it. I thought it was great. Galactus was well done. We obviously had the 2007 Fantastic Four where Galactus was a choice. It was not a great choice. Anyway, we finally got a Galactus that, was kind of worthy of that stature of character. And so I think he was really, really well done. And I was also really impressed on how they were able to provide scale for Galactus. When he's on Earth, it's obviously easy. He stands next to a building. He's super big. But in space, it's a little bit different, right? Because everything in space is big. Everything is larger than life, and everything is unfamiliar to us. They did a great job of providing that scale to truly understand just how huge this character is. For this next note, the film is too short. Here's the thing. So after coming home, I wrote down, the film is too short. It feels like there's a stash of deleted scenes somewhere that fill in gaps nicely. That's how I felt in the moment. I felt that the film was too short. It needed to be a little bit longer to include some things that I felt were missing. Upon reflection, I think the film is exactly the right length. I don't think they needed to make the film longer. I just think they needed to change the length of sequences within the film. I think the montage at the beginning is way too long. I understand why it's there. I get it that they didn't want to do the whole origin in a more standard way. I just think it was too long. They spent too much time on that montage. That time could have been better used elsewhere. So I don't think the film is too short. I think it's exactly the right length. They just need to reallocate the time elsewhere and be more economical with what they're showing us. So it is one of the better MCU films in recent memory. I really do think that they did a really great job. In terms of the actual filmmaking that went into this, I think they did a really good job. The cinematography, the score, the direction, all of that's kind of there. Most of my issues are really with story, writing, some effects work, fun. I didn't have as much fun with this. We'll get to that. I think I have a note about that later on. But yeah, I didn't have as much fun with it that I thought I would have. So, but in terms of the actual filmmaking itself, it's really good. To piggyback off of that, my next note is I thought I was going to hate the score. I kept hearing bits and pieces of it leading up to watching the film. And that Fantastic Four, hated it. Hated it, hated it, hated it. I ended up loving this score. So good job, Michael. And loved the family feels. That's one of the things that I really loved about this film was they feel like an actual family as opposed to just a collection of people brought together who become a family. They really just feel so cohesive and so, it's a family unit. And I love that. Love the 60s aesthetic. Yeah, I love the aesthetic of the film and how they set it in the 60s and how it has that vibe and that feel to it that's just different. My next note really ties in well. So I've read a lot online of a lot of people who have said that without that aesthetic, this film would feel significantly more generic or formulaic. I agree. I think if this film were to look and feel like a regular MCU film, set in present day, it would lose a lot of its charm and a lot of that fun vibe going for it. So I really do think that the aesthetic and that whole universe building that they've done in this film, yeah, I think it does a lot of the heavy lifting for this film, for sure. The effects of the Fantastic Four. Yeah, okay, so the effects of the Fantastic Four, they looked much better than I thought the trailers let on. Speaking of effects, though, Ben's face actually looked really, really good, I thought, throughout the film. It was his body that looked weird. So anytime that he was walking, especially when they had on those Fantastic Four suits that are on the poster and all that, anytime he was walking in that suit specifically, something with the animation was off. Something just didn't look right. Like his arms, his legs, the way that his body moved. Yeah, I don't know. Something just wasn't sitting well. Oh yeah, okay. So I rewatched the 2005 and 2007 films the night before watching this film. Now, I kind of said this earlier. Am I allowed to say that I had more fun with that iteration of Fantastic Four than this one? I just had fun with those films. And this one, there are moments, there are sequences, there are whole chunks of the film, actually, that I had a blast and had a fun time. But overall, when I watched the 2005 one specifically, at the end, I was like, wow, that was actually fun. Is it a great film? It is not. It is not. But it was fun, right? Whereas this, I feel like this was very well made from a filmmaking perspective, but the fun is just zapped out of it. The stretching of Reed. Yeah, so I've seen this a lot online. People complaining about Reed being stretched at the end of the film by Galactus and him in pain and not being able to stretch more than he's being stretched. I don't know what the limits, I guess, of the powers are or the rules on how things work. I just don't think it was well presented in the film. In fact, they don't really show him using his powers very much in this film at all, which is very disappointing. If there's rules on these powers, I don't mind. I actually think that having rules on powers is a good thing, so that way things don't go too out of control, but we need to know what those rules are heading in. And I just feel like they didn't do a good enough job of showing those rules. Not sure how I feel about them winning. Yeah, okay, so I wrote down here, not sure how I feel about them winning over Galactus. I'm not saying that I wanted Galactus to win and eat the Earth. I just felt it was maybe a little too easy to defeat Galactus. And again, I use defeat as like a loose term because he's not dead. He's just not there anymore, and he's not a imminent threat currently. I guess I just don't like the way that they did it. It just felt a little too easy. So one of the biggest criticisms for Ant-Man Quantumania was the fact that Ant-Man defeated Kang, who was to become the big bad in the MCU. And everyone said, well, how could Kang fall at the hands of Ant-Man? I never had a problem with that because Ant-Man defeated a Kang, whereas I just assumed that a significantly stronger Kang would rise. So I never had a problem with that. Having the Fantastic Four dispatch Galactus that easy to me. Again, like, I'm confused with my feelings. This goes to show how confused I am. I really need to watch this again. Next up, there's public outrage of the Fantastic Four for not giving up their baby to save Earth. I'm fine with that. I just thought it was weird that there was no government or military pressure to do so. They were allowed to basically stay in the Baxter building and be left alone, right? There were protesters outside the building. There really was no real external pressure from governments, from military, from anyone else. The pressure was more internal because Reed still obviously wanted to save Earth. And so he ended up coming up with a plan and all that sort of stuff. I feel like there should have been more pressure, right? They didn't have to sacrifice anything. End credit scene. Yeah, the end credit scene was not impactful. I mean, I know that this isn't necessarily on the film. I just didn't think that the end credit scene had any impact as an end credit scene. You know, I had heard bits and pieces about the scene beforehand. I kind of knew what we were going to see. So I was excited for it. I was very excited for it. And it's the biggest nothing burger ever. You know, it did its job as a tease for the next Avengers film. Sure, that's fine. But I don't know, it just did nothing for me. And honestly, did it need to be directed by the Russo brothers? No. No, it didn't. And that's it. Anyway, that's just some thoughts I had coming home from the theater. I'm really looking forward to watching this again because I really want to feel something. So I don't know, maybe on a second watch I'll feel something. What did you think about Fantastic Four First Steps? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.